my my mother and my father were both artists. Even though my father was a trained actor, he planned to go into the acting industry, but instead he ended up having a family with my mother. My mother was a trained classical singer. She was an opera singer. This is in the 50s, by the way. This is in like the mid 50s. They had children together, and they got married, and they did not pursue their careers, but they were very talented artists, which I think is significant, because I think possibly these mind control people like to experiment on artists because of possibly our imagination, because possibly we have, I don't know why, but I'm just thinking possibly, because I just hear a lot of artists are targeted individuals, a lot. And that could be the reason why, or another reason could just be that they think that we are discredited because we have imagination, that they think that we're just imagining all of this, or at least that's something that they want to try to cover up, whatever. I don't know. I just know that that's something they've said about me a lot. Oh, she has such a fabulous imagination. Well, everything I'm telling you is true, and I'm not going to talk to those people because they don't understand what's happening. So I'm going to talk to you, the people that are taking this seriously and investigating this. Okay, I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can, go through the stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Oh, another point that I'm going to try to cover is possible extraterrestrial something, because I had an incident happen. I'll get into that later, but there's a possible. I say possible. I'm really not sure about that. I know another technology that they have. I know for a fact technology to make a person invisible, bend light around them, make them partially invisible at least. I was witness to that, and I know that they had this technology in at least the late 70s, because that was when I witnessed it. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. I can't really speak for my family and all the things that they went through when they were living in New Mexico. I was born, they moved to Alaska in the late 60s. I was born in the early 70s. When I was born, my mother was told that I had jaundice, and I had to stay in the hospital. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but she told me that she left me in the hospital for, it was several days, so I can't remember how many exactly. It was like from 3 to 9 days or something like that. And I don't think she remembered exactly how long I was in the hospital. But she left me there unattended. She was not there. My mother is very obedient to authority, without question. So they probably told her that she might as well just go home and leave me there. I had nightmares when I was around 14, when I was a teenager. I used to have nightmares that people in lab coats were torturing me as baby. So I do believe that they were doing something to me in that hospital, possibly even created the jaundice so that I would have to be there. That's my own thoughts. I don't know. But the fact is, I did stay in the hospital unattended by any family members for several days right after I was born. When I was still in the womb, I incurred damage to my head, which there is still a dent on the right side of my head. I have heard multiple stories about why the dent is on my head. One of the stories or the most predominant story, is that my mother fell down a flight of stairs and that she hit the railing as she was falling down, and that smashed my head in when I was still inside her womb, possibly around 8 months, I think she said. I'm not sure. But I've heard other stories. I don't want to get into it because I don't know what caused it, but I do have a dent on my head. I had the dent when I came out, when I was born, and I still have the dent today. I was born in the early 70s. Trying to remember. Okay, so then when I was 2 years old, my mother started studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses are a Masonic organization. I'm not going to get into how I know that. I was brought up in the Jehovah's Witnesses from the time I was 2 years old until I was 13 when I left my mother's house. My mother started studying with them when I was around 2 years old. She got baptized, and she is still with the Jehovah's Witnesses. She married an elder who was also a military colonel. She married him when I was 7 years old. The incidences surrounding my mother's marriage to that Jehovah's Witness Masonic colonel, and also the coincidental divorce, my father divorcing my mother and marrying another woman who he had been having an affair with for who knows how long. The incidences surrounding that are extremely suspicious. The military colonel and elder, or I think he was a military colonel. I was told he was a colonel. I know he was in the military, and he was an elder Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was told by someone else that he was in fact a colonel in the military, but I'm not sure about that. His wife died of a brain tumor right around the same time that my father divorced my mother. My mother, he proposed to my mother within months. I mean, it was extremely weird. The whole thing was extremely weird. I possibly think that someone may have been talking in my head when I was a toddler, although I cannot remember specifically any incidences. But the reason I say that is because I have a memory of someone telling me my mother was having a Bible study in the dining room, and I remember running out in my underwear. I was a toddler, and I remember someone telling me to do it, but I don't remember that person. I'm not going to say who it was. I remember someone telling me to do it, but I don't specifically remember that person being there in the room. My mother was having a Bible study with that military colonel, the elder. I believe that possibly someone was talking in my head, and I just do not remember it, and that they were using the voice of someone that I knew. So possibly they had this voice technology in the 70s. There were several things that happened when I was a toddler that are extremely odd. For example, I had OCD when I was a child. I know that as OCD now. I didn't know what it was then. And they didn't have that kind of thing back then, diagnosis. I had OCD. In fact, I had it very severely during a period of extreme trauma when I was a child. I was able to conquer it through the help of my mother. My mother actually helped me conquer the OCD that I had, but I had it extremely bad. One of the things that I did as a toddler was I would walk a certain number of steps, and then I would turn around in a certain direction. I used to turn and just do weird things like that. And I believe now possibly that they were remote controlling my body as a child. I believe the way that they are doing this is through stimulating the brain, that they stimulate the brain. And so they cannot control you if you can control your own. All they can do is stimulate your brain to perform an action or to say something. It takes extreme self-control, but you can learn to control your impulses. They can send impulses to your brain, but you can also learn to control your impulses. I know I'm going to have to teach my son how to learn to control his impulses, because I know for a fact, and I will explain that to you. I will try to explain that to you later in this video. I know for a fact that they are able to remote control my son at this point. My son is very young. He's still a baby. And they can, when a person is very young like that, or very weak-willed, they can control. And even if you're not weak-willed, because I'm very strong-willed, and they can still somehow get me to say things that I don't even mean. I don't know how they do it, but they use trauma. I know that they use trauma. So what they'll do is they'll like traumatize me with something, and then they'll send an impulse to my brain to say something. And usually the only way that they can get me to, they can weaken my will to the point where I will follow these impulses that they send to my brain. And the way that they get you, they weaken your will, is through gangstalking, and also trauma, which gangstalking is trauma. Because the gangstalkers are taunting me about things that other people did to me, traumatizing things that happened to me. They're still gangstalking me. I get messages through my YouTube account from gangstalkers who are taunting me about things that happened when I was a child. Horrific things, terrorizing things. So they're terrorizing me. That's why I say these people are not human. They can't be. It's impossible. Either they're people that something has happened to their brains, or they're just not human at all. But I'm telling you, they are not human. They do not have normal human emotion. If you're going to taunt somebody about something that happened to them when they were an infant, you're not human. You know what I mean? There's no way. Trying to go through this as fast as I can. Okay, so where was I? I'm sorry, I can't try to remember this stuff, and I'm not going to edit that. I just can't edit this. It's too much. I just don't have the time or the energy. So I'm sorry, but for those people that really care about what's going on, you can listen to this. So where was I? Okay, so I was born. My mother became a Jehovah's Witness. She married an elder under suspicious circumstances. His wife, like I said, died of a brain tumor around the same time my father divorced her. My mother married a woman. My mother married a man who was abusive, and my father married a woman who was abusive. Both of my step-parents were extremely abusive to me when I was growing up in different ways. My stepmother was psychologically abusive, and my stepfather was abusive in other ways. So they split up my family when I was 7 years old. And I also know that they were conducting tests on me when I was in school, that some of my teachers were involved in these projects. Possibly, I think that these projects, I believe possibly this is Project Monarch, because of something that happened in 4th grade that I will get to. First, I'm going to start in 1st grade. I remember going on a field trip when I was in 1st grade. Oh, one other thing I should mention. Once my mother joined the Jehovah's Witnesses, I was put into extreme social isolation. I lived in a house right next to the Kingdom Hall, totally separate from all other children. I was not allowed to associate with anyone unless they went to my church. I was not allowed to celebrate holidays. When I was in school, I was not allowed to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Anytime I would start school at the beginning of the year, my mother would have a conversation, and she was instructed to do this by the Jehovah's Witnesses. She would have a private conversation with my teacher explaining that I could not say the Pledge of Allegiance, that I could not celebrate any holidays, and that when they were to bring out Valentine's cupcakes or Christmas cupcakes or any other holiday, I was to go to the library.